Syracuse football has been disrespected.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, Syracuse football has been disrespected. Kyle McCord, not a top 10 quarterback in the ACC, and Coach Fran Brown is a bottom 5 head coach in the conference. Are you kidding me? We're going to break it all down here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay. By now, if you've been watching or listening to my channel over these past few months since I have taken over here, and if you're new, welcome. Always welcome new listeners and new viewers. But by now, you might know that I am not as much on the hype train as everyone else with Syracuse football for next season. I'm not. I'm going to qualify myself like that. I said on yesterday's podcast that I have Syracuse at 8-4. I'm not really willing to give them more than 8 wins until I see how they perform next season. And then I can, of course, amend my prediction. But for now, I'm not willing to go more than 8 because the track record of recent Syracuse first-year head coaches has not been very good. Over the past 4 that they've had, only 1 has finished with a winning record in their first season. That was Scott Schaefer in 2013. So the point being, I'd like to think that while this is a Syracuse podcast and my job is to know about Syracuse sports, the ins and outs, I'd like to think that I am aware of the surroundings and that not everything revolves around Syracuse. That's my qualifier here, okay? But some of the lists I've been seeing out here, and it's coming from CF Budge on Twitter. Shout out CF Budge. I would love to have you on the podcast so that we can talk about this stuff. He came out with a couple of lists recently, and they're just flat out ridiculous. Kyle McCord, the 11th best quarterback in the ACC. Are you kidding me? 11th. 11th. Kyle McCord. Just a second here. Last year at Ohio State, he had about 3,200 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, good completion rate, and he had a top 10 QBR in the country. Obviously, he was a 4-star transfer, number 14 overall quarterback on 24/7 Sports. And this guy, CF Budge, has him as the 11th best quarterback in the ACC. That's just ridiculous. What is Kyle McCord's greatest crime? What did he do to deserve this disrespect? Because obviously, I think most people would disagree with this. Why was he not really at Ohio State anymore? Why did he maybe fall out of their favor? Well, who are Ohio State's last 3 quarterbacks behind him? The last 3 behind Kyle McCord. Let's talk this out here. CJ Stroud. He's pretty good, right? CJ Stroud. I believe he just won Rookie of the Year. Texans are a dark horse Super Bowl candidate. I'd say CJ Stroud is pretty good. And on top of that, he was a first-round NFL draft pick. Before CJ Stroud, it was Justin Fields. I know Justin Fields hasn't had the greatest NFL career in the world. He was still a first-round pick. He lit up college football. In fact, I believe he led Ohio State to a national championship game. They didn't win. But he outdueled Trevor Lawrence in that game. I remember that. As a Jets fan, I remember because I was salivating at 2 thinking about taking him. Instead, they took Zach Wilson. Didn't really matter in the end. But point being, Justin Fields was pretty good in college. First-round pick. And then before that, it was Dwayne Haskins, who was also a first-round NFL draft pick. So, okay, Kyle McCord, yeah, he had great weapons. He had Marvin Harrison. He had Emeka Egbuka. All that talent. And he didn't light the world on fire like the three guys that I mentioned. He didn't do that. But was he bad? Was he awful last season? No. He was still solid. 24 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. I see people saying, well, any Power 5 quarterback could have done that. Oh, really? Really? Any of them? You think any Power 5 quarterback could have put up those numbers with those weapons? I disagree with you. I don't think any of them could. I think Kyle McCord is not the same player as those other 3 quarterbacks that came behind him. But all Kyle McCord did was not be one of those guys. He is still an exceptionally talented kid. He was a 5-star recruit for a reason. He had a pretty solid year at Ohio State, got ran out of town because he wasn't a first-round NFL caliber quarterback. And all of a sudden, now he comes to Syracuse as a top 15 overall transfer quarterback in the class, according to 24/7 Sports. And you're ranking him outside the top 10 in the ACC. CF Budge, we are not watching football together. And by that, I mean we're not watching the same sport. We're not watching the same sport here. Kyle McCord has got to be, just by default, without even looking at the list, because trust me, coming up, we're going to look at the list of guys ahead of Kyle McCord because, oh my goodness, it's very interesting. Without even looking at the list, unless you can tell me there are like 7 or 8 NFL players in the ACC at quarterback, Kyle McCord almost by default has to be in that range at minimum. At minimum. So outside the top 10 is just, I don't get it. Congratulations, CF Budge. I'd love to have you on the podcast because we can talk about this. Now, coming up, we're going to name the guys who are ahead of Kyle McCord and where I think Kyle McCord should rank. And then after that, talk about a little bit of Fran Brown and where he ranks in the ACC. I was once trying to buy a last-minute ticket for a New York Mets game last year, and it was frustrating. I couldn't see the view from my seat, and the deals weren't that good at all. That's why I now use Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. One game that I'm thinking about attending is Mets-Marlins down in Miami on May 19th, and I can get in for as little as $5. I went to the Gametime app, searched up Mets tickets, and the deal popped up right away. You can do the same with any team of your choosing, and that includes the Syracuse Mets. Yes, the hometown Syracuse Mets. It was so easy to find. They're at home tomorrow, and you can get in for $5 to see the Syracuse Mets. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. One bet that I'm looking at as a Florida Panthers fan is the Panthers to win the Stanley Cup at plus 650. And I know I might be a little bit biased, but at the same time, I love hockey. I've watched this team. I'm telling you, the way they play, they have a very good chance at winning the Stanley Cup. They won the Atlantic Division and currently hold a 1-0 series lead on the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that's your betting advice. Florida Panthers plus 650 to win the Stanley Cup. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise. With live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back, everyone, in the Locked On Syracuse Podcast. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's episode, we are talking about how Syracuse football has been disrespected. Kyle McCord, not a top 10 quarterback, according to CF Budge. And my goodness, the greatest crime that Kyle McCord ever committed was that he is not like the three guys that came before him at Ohio State. Not a first-round NFL talent like a C.J. Stroud and Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins, all top quarterback prospects. Maybe he's not that, but he is still a very solid quarterback, and having him outside the top 10 is just disrespectful. So now let's actually get into the list. Who are the guys that he has ahead of Kyle McCord? Let's start. Cam Ward from Miami, Grayson McCall from NC State, Kyron Drones from Virginia Tech, Haynes King from Georgia Tech, Preston Stone from SMU, Cade Klubnik from Clemson, Tyler Shough from Louisville, DJ Uyunglele from FSU, Thomas Castellanos from Boston College, and Fernando Mendoza from Cal. All right, I know that was a lot of names that I threw out you. Point is, all of those guys are ranked ahead of Kyle McCord. And also, by the way, Malik Murphy from Duke, who was the number 6 overall transfer quarterback-wise from Texas, number 13 on his list. So that was not good either. Here's who I'll concede. There's one guy, only one, that I will say definitively I would take over Kyle McCord. Now, I'm not saying that I would rank Kyle McCord second in the ACC, but I'm saying there's only one on that list where, yeah, I can't debate it. I can't. That's Cam Ward at Miami. He was the number 4 overall transfer quarterback available from Washington State. He had 3,700 yards. He had 25 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. He's the only one. He's proven in the Power 5. He's been really good for 4 years. He's going to Miami. I'm sure he's going to have a great year. I would take Cam Ward over Kyle McCord. I would. And that is with beyond a shadow of a doubt. If I was given the choice, Cam Ward or Kyle McCord, I'd take Cam Ward. But outside of that, I kind of put these guys in tiers. So this is the Kyle McCord tier. I listed 4 guys, in my opinion, that I would put in that conversation with him. First of all, Kyron Drones. Now, Kyron Drones is from Virginia Tech again. He is more of a running quarterback, but he still had 17 touchdowns to 3 interceptions last season. He had over 800 rushing yards. Played pretty well against Syracuse. So yeah, Kyron Drones, experienced starter at Virginia Tech, I would put on the same ballpark as Kyle McCord. You can argue who's better. Same tier though. Haynes King, he said that CF Budge actually said that Haynes King is underrated, and I actually kind of agree with him on this one. I put him on the same tier as Kyle McCord. He had 27 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. So a lot of turnovers by Haynes King over at Georgia Tech. But great runner. Over 700 yards, 10 scores on the ground. So he had 3 touchdowns against Syracuse. Haynes King, okay. We can debate Haynes King versus Kyle McCord. Then there's DJ Uyunglele at Florida State. And I've never been a big fan of DJ, but at the same time, the last 2 years at Clemson and Oregon State, he has had a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio and is an experienced starting quarterback. So I'd argue him and Kyle McCord. Personal preference, right? And then there's Cade Klubnik, and this one might be a little bit controversial for some, but Klubnik is a top recruit or former top recruit, and he didn't have the greatest season in the world. He had under 3,000 yards. He had about a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. But I think he might be able to take a jump. And if he does take a jump, he could end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. So I would put him on a similar tier to Kyle McCord. If you were to ask me who I want, I would probably say Kyle McCord for now, but check back with me in November. Now, the next tier I'm going to give you is non-Power 5 proven. These are guys that are good, but they haven't been proven in the Power 5 yet. Next year, it's going to be the Power 4. Grayson McCall from NC State. He had 88 touchdowns to 14 interceptions in his career. Obviously very good at Coastal Carolina. Was a top 20 quarterback in the transfer rankings. Not proven in the Power 5, though. Not proven. Ranked ahead of Kyle McCord. Not so sure. Not proven in the Power 5. And then you got Preston Stone from SMU. Similar deal. 28 touchdowns to 6 interceptions last year. Playing in the American Conference. Yeah, okay. By the way, Grayson McCall goes to NC State, but back to Preston Stone. He could have a big year, sure, but it's one of those, not proven yet. Not going to take him yet over Kyle McCord. But then these three guys that I'm about to mention are what drive me bananas. Absolutely bananas. This is where I go off. Tyler Shough from Louisville has not been a full-time starter in 5 years. He is a 3-star transfer with a career of 36 touchdowns to 17 interceptions at Louisville this year. He was at Oregon and Texas Tech the years before. Tyler Shough, are you out of your mind? You would take him over Kyle McCord. Bananas. Thomas Castellanos from Boston College. He is proven in the Power 5. I agree with that. But he proved one thing to me last year, and that's that he sucks. Thomas Castellanos stinks. 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions last year at Boston College. Do you guys remember that game, Syracuse and BC last year, where nobody can move the football? Where nobody could do it? Thomas Castellanos can run. He had over 1,000 yards last year. That would be great if he was a running back. Problem is, he has to throw the football, and he doesn't do it particularly well. You would take him over Kyle McCord, who was top 10 in the country in QBR. Thomas Castellanos, are you kidding me? Yeah, he proved that he sucked last year. That's what he proved. And then there's Fernando Mendoza at Cal, who played 9 games last season and had 14 touchdowns and 10 picks. And he's not much of a runner, and he was a low-end 3-star quarterback prospect coming in to college. So you can't even really give me that potential factor like a Cade Klubnik because he was a top recruit. So maybe you expect that jump from him. My God, I can't. Tyler Shough stinks. Thomas Castellanos is awful. And Fernando Mendoza, I don't have I've already used every adjective I could. Point being, you have those three ahead of him. Those three. Over Kyle McCord. 11th best quarterback. CF Budge, congratulations. Once again, I would love to have you on because we need to talk about that. We need to talk about that. Now coming up, Fran Brown, 14th best head coach in the ACC. But what was the criteria that was used to determine it? Guys, I need you all to listen up for this huge announcement. I have been tracking the leaderboards every day, keeping my eye on the scores, putting all my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce I am finally on top. That's right, obviously, I'm talking about the hit mobile game Monopoly Go. You've probably heard of it because it's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on classic Monopoly. You can play anywhere, anytime. You explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon, all while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. You can charge your friends rent on your iconic properties or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. My favorite part is the leaderboards where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So go get yourself on the charts. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's episode, I have been giving Syracuse football their pom-poms because while I haven't been as bullish on Syracuse football as many of you have been, I still project them to win 8 games next season. Kyle McCord as the 11th best quarterback in the ACC is mind-boggling. Unbelievable. But now it's time to get to Head Coach Fran Brown. CF Budge ranked Fran Brown as the 14th best head coach in the ACC. Now, I want to qualify this. The way he decided it was, quote, the main criteria for the rankings is not resume, but current impact as a head coach. First of all, this may be just me. It's probably a me thing. I highly doubt that anyone else would agree with me on this, but when I evaluate head coaches, I typically will look at win-loss record. That might be crazy. I understand. You might be coming at me here. But I personally, when I'm evaluating head coaches, the first thing I do is, well, how often do they win versus how often do they lose? Because I prefer guys who are going to win more than lose. Having said that, if that's the way the criteria works, I don't necessarily have a problem with Fran Brown being 14th on the list. And here's why. Fran Brown has never been a head coach. So if you're using wins and losses, okay, I get it. He hasn't been a head coach yet. It's kind of one of those, we don't know, so we're going to put him towards the bottom and we'll just let him coach. And he'll obviously rise if he does well. And if he doesn't, he'll stay the same or go down, right? In any of those rankings. I get that. That I don't have necessarily a problem with. But CF Budge judged his criteria on best coaches in the ACC on impact as a head coach, not on resume. So Fran Brown, 14th in the ACC on impact towards Syracuse football. Not wins and losses, impact. Well, maybe a couple weeks ago, I did a podcast about where Syracuse football ranks in terms of their recruiting classes and the perspective of it since Fran Brown has gotten here. So I'll give it to you again because it's been a little updated. In 2024, so this season, Syracuse has the number 37 overall recruiting class. And the last time that Syracuse had that good of a recruiting class was in 2001, when Syracuse was 29th. I'm using 24/7 sports rankings, by the way. Remember, impact, not wins and losses, right? Since 2003, Syracuse has had a top 50 recruiting class just twice heading into this season, and that was 2007 and 2019. CF Budge. Fran Brown already has it at 37 for going into this year. He hasn't made an impact on Syracuse football. He's 14th in the ACC in impact. Now, I can't tell you the last time that Syracuse has had 5 4-stars in one class, which is what they have coming into this season, because 24/7 Sports didn't have the ratings of these guys until 2011. But it hasn't happened since the ratings were not necessarily introduced, but listed. 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, etc. You get the point. So we already brought in more 4-star recruits heading into this year than Syracuse has done at least since 2011. Okay. But let's go even further. 2025. Syracuse has a top 10 recruiting class in the country. In fact, they're at number 9 overall. The last time that Syracuse had a top 20 overall class was in 2000. And I cannot find the last time Syracuse was top 10. Once again, CF Budge, you said impact on the program, not resume. Head Coach Fran Brown's recruiting has been more impactful on their school than perhaps any other school in the conference, if not the country. Impact. And in 2026, I know it's far out, they have the number 10 recruiting class in the country. They have 3 4-star recruits, and 2 of those guys are inside the top 80 in the country. Those guys are Demetrius Samuel, who we had his high school coach on the podcast, and Isaiah Williams. Those are the top 80 guys. And Deontay Sheffy is the other one. He's a running back, 4-star recruit, recently committed. I believe he was the one who committed during the spring game. Yeah, so I just gave you a lot of recruiting numbers, but here's the point. Coach Fran Brown's recruiting has been more impactful on the Syracuse football program than probably any other coach in the ACC. That's how good his recruiting has been. He is turning this program around. But you have him as 14th on your criteria. Again, if you were doing by wins and losses, which is how you probably should be to be doing it to begin with, if you were going by wins and losses, I get it. He hasn't coached a game. I completely understand. But you said impact. You said impact. I just gave you all Syracuse football's recruiting rankings. Has any other team done that? Even close to that? Taking a program that couldn't recruit at all and is now in 2025 a top 10 class in the country, and they're probably not going to stay there for long. But still, Syracuse football has never been like that. Okay. It is what it is. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, because while I normally drop episodes at 9 a.m. Monday through Friday, who knows? Maybe there'll be a recruit decision. Dakota LeFew, we're still waiting on him. And I might drop him sometimes the night before. So that's why I got to turn on those notifications. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Everyone, take care.